So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to. So we are back with a brand new movie on What If Naruto Had Powers with Mocking Moon Hidden Life of Him movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. It was a dark, gray and rainy night when he left. So glum and miserable, it suited his current mood, his thoughts, his soul, hell, it suited him. He watched with heavy sleep-deprived eyes as the rain clinked cheerlessly on the glass window. He rolled out of his bed, one that he would miss. Removing his walrus night hat and placing it lovingly on the bed soon after his having made it. Moving about his empty apartment cleaning and putting things to sorts. He'd not really cleaned his place ever. Yet he didn't want anyone to be troubled over him. It just wouldn't be right. After the place was dully gleaming in new cleanness, he sighed sadly and got out the two bags. One much like a backpack. The other a duffel bag he'd tie onto the other. Tossing them on the floor, he proceeded to pack. Clothes, only the dark and newly bought ones he'd gotten for this reason. He'd been careful to pick and choose off and on so no one would be aware. He packed the bundle of food and lightweight cookware, bandages and medical equipment, scrolls, weapons, and one small, tattered and well-viewed picture. His eyes stared at that little picture, a ghosted smile twitching his lips as his fingers brushed lovingly over it. He'd die a million deaths, it hurt for the past 3 months. Knowing he couldn't breath a word of it, knowing they would fling rumors, rejoice at his absence, claim him evil or a traitor, maybe some would cry. Might miss him, try and follow and find him, maybe. He sighed and tightened up the ropes on his bags, looking with overly wet eyes at the blazing defiantly bright orange clothes, folded neatly and carefully on the bed. He felt dead. He never thought he'd do something that could tear his soul like this. Odd, he never would have thought he was so attached to the pain. Yet, the pain was the pain he'd grew to understand, to overcome and defy, and by his defying of that pain, he'd made his own self-image as the #1 loudmouth ninja, the Dobi, Baka, the one who no one could bring down. But now, he would have to leave everything about that ninja behind. He was to remain here, while he left. Now that made no bloody sense. I'm leaving the image and lifestyle I grew up with. I suppose that is who I am. But now I have to create a new self-image, and leave. Blue eyes tinted with sorrow at his own self-musings. Looking around the tiny apartment once more, being sure that nothing important was left. Nothing important. What irony. I'm leaving my life behind. What more than that did I ever have? But it's for a good reason, and it's for the village. So, damn, I still don't want to do it. But, damn, I can't run away from it. Hell, would I ever love to run away from it? Oi, Kit, enough stalling. Get your ass moving. You're burning the time. We have to get a good headway. We're going to have to disappear, you remember, so more time means losing them faster. So hurry up. You have to go, so say a quiet goodbye then get a move on. The quicker we leave the quicker we can get back right. Hi, Kyubi, but, it's hard. Do you think they will understand when we come back? I mean, I know that Boss-san will tell them that I'm not an enemy when I get back, but will they be cold? I mean, I could have told them for 3 months now. I think they'll be angry, but it was for the best, right? I mean, we couldn't just. Hi Geki, hi, it is for the best that they didn't know. Besides, we still don't know if some of the local visiting people are truly just visiting, so you were keeping up our profile, but I think we have to get going now. Enough wondering, do that later, right now we must leave. Hi, looking around the sad little room once more, a grim smile forms before he leaves out the door. Pushing his chakra levels lower than he normally would have, he stalked through the shadows towards the houses he had to visit before he left, his clothing quickly becoming rain-slicked. Some things just had to be done. So he slipped unheeded by the Anbu that watched for trouble and events to be reported. He'd been training since he first found out 3 months ago that he'd be leaving, how to slip unnoticed by the Anbu. Learned their patterns and how far to stay to keep from being noticed. Then of course, it also helped that the demon sealed within him happened to be a kitsune. Foxes were, as all wise men knew, tricksters, cunning, sly, clever and of course, sneaky. The first house was guarded by Anbu, but he slipped by them without any problems, making his way to the window on the 3rd floor to peek in. A flickering smile gracing a young face, with sad hollow blue eyes, gazing at the younger dark-haired boy. He'd miss the little guy. Hopefully, he and his friends wouldn't think he went bad. That would really sting. To go from being Ni-chan and leader, to being some traitor. Sorry, I would have told you if I could have. Train hard, and I promise. I promise. I'll send you back some small things from all the places I visit as an apology for just up and leaving. Yane. With a parting smile he whisked by the Anbu once more towards another house. Another building, cheaper, and less lustered, but homey. Looking up at the building, he said his quiet goodbye, not risking looking in through a window. Don't be mad, and don't blame yourself. You are such a worrywart. Promise when I get back, I'll treat you to ramen, and tell you all about what I did, so you just keep Kakashi-sensei busy. See ya around Iruka-sensei. A grin, then once more heading off. Another house similar to the last came into view. He smirked, wondering if he shouldn't have just said this goodbye back there anyways. It was likely that's where this house's occupant was. Ah well. Single quote. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei. Keep Iruka happy, and keep Sasuke from getting a big head, and from trouble while you're at it. Gomen, I really would have liked to have had you teach me some tricks or something, but, Gomen. Yeah, trotting off to the next house with a grim, set face. This house was comfortable, a family house, with that family feeling. Jumping up to the second level, looking in through the window to stare at the pink-haired girl within. Gomen Sakura-chan, I won't be able to yell at Kakashi-sensei with you anymore, but I'm sorry, really. I want you to take care of yourself, you hear me? Take care of yourself, and just so you know, I really am gonna miss you and the others. Try and keep the guys out of trouble, alright, thanks. Yeah, he gave a little smile then jumped off. Now however, he looked at the foreboding dark, Uchiha house. This was his last stop, and most likely the hardest. Come on kid, we really don't have much more time to spend. But, I don't think I can. Then don't say goodbye, because then there won't be anything that changes, alright? Bull, you already told me, after this I'm not going to be the same, and even I can realize this is going to be the end of the Naruto they all know. They might hate my new me. Then say goodbye, single quote. Gomen, Sasuke, Gomen, Ya, stricken blue eyes, gaze torn, looked at the house. He really didn't want to go. He had just realized a few weeks ago what happened, but now he couldn't even get the chance to tell him. It was unfair that he only figured it out then, but now, he had known he was going, so it would have been unfair, yet maybe, oh hell. He had to leave, now. Ya, Sasuke. Then as a silent blur, the boy left. Leaving behind the person he used to be. Leaving behind a small boy who looked up to him and called him leader. Leaving behind a man who he thought of as an older brother, who had passed him into becoming a ninja and was the first to acknowledge him. Leaving behind his silver-haired sensei who'd taught him how to be a true ninja and came to be someone he looked to for help. Leaving a pink-haired teammate who yelled at him, with him and was a dear person in his rotten life. Someone he enjoyed protecting, but most painful. He was leaving behind a blue-black-haired boy, with eyes darker than the night, with ethereal pale moonlight-colored skin. His mocking smirk and sharp retorts. His odd protectiveness and raging rivalry. He was leaving behind a boy he'd only a few weeks before, he'd come to realize he was in love with, only to have to leave behind everything. It hurt, but maybe it was best to just take the memories without knowing what the answer Sasuke would have given the past Naruto, because he would return a new and different Naruto, regardless of if he tried not to change, he would all the same. One last look, Naruto turned and felt a sad smile etch itself onto his face. He really was doing this. Yes, he was. He really was an idiot, wasn't he? Quote. Yeah, he whispered, then took off into the night like a fox, scuttling away never to be found by morning's light. Gone. What do you mean he's gone? Sakura screeched loud enough that even the others who knew and graduated with Team 7 heard from wherever they were located at the time. Each thinking Sasuke had run off, so hurried to find out what happened. When they arrived though, they only saw a paler-looking Sasuke and a shocked and silently crying Sakura gazing at their sensei who also looked pained. Why would he just leave, and leave behind? Sakura stuttered in shock. They all then noticed that she had Naruto's orange ninja clothes in her hands. They all stared with disbelief. Naruto, not in his orange, that just wasn't. Sasuke stood there, he couldn't believe it. Gone where? Why? Where the hell did that Dobi go now? And why wasn't he in his colors? He ran away, why? Dobi, why did you leave me? He thought with glassy eyes. He'd have never spoke a word of his feelings for the hyper sunshine blonde, not even on pain of death. But but if it would have kept the blonde here, he would have yelled it from the top of the mountains for the whole world to hear, if he had known. 4 months later, Sakura sighed as she leaned against the bridge railing. The day was so beautiful. Yet the silence that hung in the air was so damning, so Naruto ed. She sighed as her head joined her arms on the bridge rail. She watched the water slowly drift under the bridge, listening to the quiet, wishing that there was a loud-mouthed baka to stir up trouble. To start fights with Sasuke. Nay, Sasuke-kun, do you think he's happy wherever he is? She asked wistfully, waiting for a response, yet after a while she glanced over at Sasuke. He was staring off towards the gates of the village, a look that could only be described as longing written so clear in his normally emotionless eyes. Sighing, Sakura went back to watching the water. Neither she nor Sasuke responded to Kakashi-sensei's pale greeting of, "Yo, Naruto, where are you Dobi?" Sasuke mentally yelled later that night, eyes locking on the dreary moon. Mocking moon was more like it. The last memory Sasuke had of his moronic teammate was of the last mission they did together. Sasuke had first watched that night. The others went to bed, sleeping soon enough. It was maybe an hour later when Naruto sat down by him without a word. "What are you doing up Dobi? Your shift is after mine." He waited for an answer but never got one. He looked over to see that Naruto had laid down beside him and fallen asleep. The moonlight making his relaxed angel face all the more lovely. His hair a silver gold that whispered over his face. He continued to stare at his teammate, a small tugging smile reaching his lips as he silently went back to his night watch. Stupid moon, why the hell did it have to remind him of Naruto? Wasn't it bad enough the blonde's absence was noted in every daily event? Enough that he plagued his mind. Enough that he found himself searching the woods on nights when sleep was so elusive that he thought he might have a better chance to find some way to find Naruto than to sleep, only to find himself at said blonde's old apartment curled around the small orange jacket that was put back there. "Dobi, I never got to. Come back, please. I miss you, terribly." Sasuke whispered thoughts, wishing that they might be answered. Sitting in a small icy clearing, a tiny fire to keep him warm. Clear icy eyes looked up at the moon, the echoing sadness lost on the world. A shiver sliding up his spine. His drifting golden hair flickering on the bitter wind. Single quote. "I still. I know Kitling, I know, but we've done a great deal to be sure he'll be safer. Think of your work that way, to keep your precious people safer." Single quote. I guess, but I still miss him, even just fighting with him, but now, just looking at him would be nice. A welcome change from, just. His musings cut short as he looks down at the tattered picture held gently and lovingly in his hands. Fingers brushing over the dark-haired youth. "Sasuke," his voice whispered softly, a caress on the wind. Blue eyes once so merry and dancing with laughter, now were so icy clear blue with sadness and longing. His once yellow blonde hair, now a glimmering golden hue from his long days in the sun. Also, his clothes once so bright and cheery, now were replaced with black pants, and a dark crimson-red turtleneck shirt with a companion crimson-red face mask. Over all of this a black cloak, a hood attached, but rarely used, and oddly, he'd come to wear a pair of black gloves with the fingers cut off. Sighing, Naruto put the picture safely away with his other hidden treasure. His village ninja headband, both too identifying to be left for others to view. He'd just recently come away from a village where trouble was starting to stew, so he needed to send word home. Writing the scroll he wrote what he'd discovered, as well as a tiny note about how he'd been doing, and a request to maybe know how the others were doing. Also placing a few tiny gifts with the scroll, with name tags for who each was for. One child's toy ninja doll to a small dark-haired boy. A small red scroll on female love fortune-telling, to a love-struck pink-haired girl. A pack of cookies, a scroll on star configurations, and a little pack of winter rose seeds to one team. A little rubber squeak bone with a pack of dog treats, a scroll on the soothing techniques some sounds have on bugs, and a scroll about a girl who went from being a poor overlooked servant to a lovely girl married to a prince for another team. A scroll on 1001 ways to court unwilling ladies, a scroll on 100 ways to tell guys who just don't get you love them, and a scroll on the theories of fate, chance and futures to yet another team. A scroll on 1000 ways to surprise your lover in bed to a shy brown-haired sensei who could no doubt put the book to good use. The latest edition of Come Come Paradise for the silver-haired sensei, and last but not least, a very fine blue-hued dagger for a boy who taunted every moment of his time away. Placing everything in a small bag, he then performed a summoning jutsu. Soon as the smoke cleared a stunning red, Three-Tailed Fox looked back at him. Its head titling to one side in question to why it had been called. Take this to Boss San. Wait there, and if she asks, say you're waiting for a message to bring back to me, and check on, if you have time. Course, no troubles. Easy, and I'll see if I can pinch a cup ramen while I'm at it. Be back before you know it. The fox said cheekily, taking the bag Naruto held out for it. Thanks a lot, Kit Kit. See you when you get back. He replied with a soft smile that didn't reach his eyes. Don't look so sad. I'm sure you'll be done soon. Hell, I bet you will be done by the time this year is out. Just you wait, you'll be back with Loverboy in no time. The fox darted away when Naruto reached to smack it for the Loverboy comment. Sighing and giving a tiny smile, he looked back up to the moon. Sasuke. A week later, a smart little three-tailed fox slipped past Anbu guards and went right into the Hokage's room, startling the occupant, who glared at the little fox. What do you want? Message for one ugly Boss San. What else? And other stuff for other people too, the fox replied with a grin and a wink. Well, I suppose that's fine. Don't know how I'm supposed to explain how I got my hands on them. Why explain? You're the boss. It's not their business. Just tell them he gave it, and you can't say how you got it, where he is, or why he left. They can't do anything about it but sit there. So that's that, the fox replied in kind. I suppose you're right, but I have a feeling Sasuke might be a little forgetful of who I am when it comes to finding out where our blonde maniac is. Maniac? I think you are talking about the old Naru. The new one is sad, very sad. Even the big boss feels for the lil guy. All the people around him notice how sad he is, but I suppose it makes him seem a less likely spy. Ah well, he'll be back soon enough, the fox muttered, dropping the bag. I think all this can be taken care of without any real trouble, but it's good to know there could have been trouble. Good to hear he's doing all right. I suppose it's only fair I send him a message. Give me a minute and it'll be done. The fox nodded. Soon, the letter and bag were his again. Giving a grin, the fox leapt out and headed into the town. A cup ramen and some updates on a certain blue black-haired boy acquired before it scuttled away. The next day, 4 teams, a small boy, a teacher and a sensei were standing and looking back at the Hokage as she sat there looking at each. She seemed to be trying to reach some sort of decision. Finally sighing, she shook her head as she muttered, "Damn, this is going to be ugly." She stood up, then proceeded to pick up a box. Then withdrew from that box 15 smaller boxes. Then looked at each of them, taking a deep breath, then proceed to drop the bomb. "These boxes are for each of you, from Naruto." She waited till they got over their shock. Soon looks of questions, painful deaths, and torture appeared in the eyes of those before her, holding up her hands before anyone could voice their questions. "Now don't start. I can't tell you how I got these. I can't tell you where he is. I can't tell you why he's there. Don't ask, because I'm not going to tell any of you. Only 2 people know where, why and what he is doing, me, and himself, so don't think of trying to find out. Now each have a name tag, so take yours and be dismissed." She then turned and made a quick retreat before any could get a word in. Iruka was the first to move. He went up to the boxes, spotting his, picked it up. Looking over the others, he then picked up another and handed it to the small boy. He didn't wait, he opened the box right then and there, revealing the tiny ninja doll, with a tiny note as well, "A friend to talk to if ya get lonely." Naruto, the small boy, read and reread the little slip of paper, then took another look at the small ninja, only to then notice that on the headband, a tiny leaf had been carved in. On the verge of tears, the little boy cradled the toy carefully. The others watched the boy with his gift, and soon each went to collect his or her box. However, they did not open theirs there, opting instead to do it on their own time. None spoke as they all left for their respective homes. Sasuke felt numb. He had wanted answers from the Hokage, but none would be given. Then he'd been presented with a box, in which was some gift from Naruto. Naruto. He felt his throat tighten with emotion as his fingers moved to open the small box. Yet they shook so badly, that it took him a good few minutes to open it. He then reached in and withdrew the dagger, eyes wide as he took in the beauty, detail and craft of the blue-black blade. He noticed the note, and found himself reading. "Hey, I saw this in a shop window. The color reminded me of yacht. It's supposed to bring its owner purity. They say it's blue-black 'cause it's sucking up the evil about, so. Yeah, I figured you might need it 'cause of that thing with your brother, or whatever." Naruto Sasuke sat down and read the note over and over, his eyes glazing slightly. You saw it, and thought of me, you mean you actually thought about me. Naruto, where are you, Dobi? A year later, a long, gray year for the village. No one knew. No one could have known. How could they have? They only saw him as a brat. A pest, a demon whom had killed their loved ones. How could they have known? How could they not have known? Even those who had hated him felt it. That sick grayness, it was there every morning. You'd wake, and go out, expecting to have the loud sunshine bundle of racket bounce by. To smile as though the world were perfect. As though nothing bad could ever occur. Even though it had. Even though it would without doubt occur again. Yet that smile, and annoying loud mouth would have the world bright and you laughing at him. With him the world was beautiful even with the darkness trying to destroy the village. It was all kept at bay by his endless cheer. It was gone now. He was gone now. Now the darkness began to grasp at the village. Only his former glow kept it from consuming everyone. The memory of him kept a slight glow to keep total darkness away from most. The village learned the age-old quote, you never know how much you love something until it's gone. They learned that lesson very well. However, like the sunshine he was often compared to. Those who stare too long see white in their vision for long after. Only to be lost and blind once it's taken from them. Sasuke was one of those people. He was a shell of the great and once proud boy. Now he was nothing more than a very untouchable 16-year-old Anbu. He hardly spoke to anyone. Hardly paid attention to anyone. Sakura and Kakashi were the only two people he really ever gave a quiet reply to. Everyone came to terms with Sasuke's unspoken secret. They didn't need him to say a word to know. Yet, where once this might have been cause of great disgust and anguish by his fangirls. Now, it was merely a sad fact. Of all those who missed their sunshine boy, Sasuke missed him the most, and thus the gray was by far darker for him. The other rookies who'd become close to Naruto over the years during the Snake's Wrath and the missing of their prodigy Sasuke going out to finish his mission as Avenger. They all had heavy hearts as well, each found with sad smiles at different moments of the day. Sometimes murmuring that Naruto would have found humor in this or that the blonde would have been proud or happy or sad at what occurred. They all treasured the tiny gifts sent by Naruto. Each time they were called collectively, they hoped that they might find what all of them wanted. Naruto, there in person. With a grin and a laugh. But always, they left with a tiny box. A note and gift inside. A short note, a precious and touching gift. And all wished they could see him again. Iruka-sensei was found going to the blonde's house once a week to dust and be sure everything was fine. Then found later at the blonde's old watering hole. A small ramen stand that many people would visit now and then. Looking for that blonde mop. A stool that remained empty all year, his stool. Everyone would stare at that stool. But none ever dared to sit on it. It would be wrong. The cook often placed a bowl of ramen in front of the empty seat. Leaving it there, only for it to go cold. The Hokage was asked every day after 5 months had passed. It might be the rookies who were now Anbu and teachers and medics. Or it might be the people who used to yell and glare at the blonde. All asked, begged and cried to her. They wanted him to come back. For her to call him back. Yet they didn't know. She tried to talk him into coming back after they all started asking. She sent notes to him. But he'd never follow it. He'd go on to the next spot, telling her that he'd not go back on his promise. That he could do this. So she let him. What else could she do? Yet she always sent a note telling him that people missed him and wanted him to come home. Yet he still did his work. Naruto sighed as he looked down at the 2 lonely graves before him. He placed a red rose on one, a white on the other. His sad eyes dancing over the names. A smile that could make even the heartless to weep on his face. His voice a bare whisper and thick with emotion. Thought I'd pay you 2 a visit while I was here in water country. Still together I hope, cause being alone sucks, trust me, well I have to get going. Ya, Haku, Zabusa. Another 4 years pass. Life was peaceful in the village. There were no wars on the horizon. No fighting of major conflict. Business was fair, yet still, a darkness gripped the village. Would continue to hold on to the village until its sunshine returned. Yet, when they asked the Hokage a year ago, she told them that he was supposed to return. Yet, here it was. Still a year more, and still their sunshine had not returned. Everyone wondered what was keeping him. Some thought that he might have found someone. Some that he was killed. Some that he just died. Others said that he didn't want to come back. Yet there were the hopeful, who said he'd be back. he was just taking his time. It was very common to find the Anbu with a perfect white mask with a small fan of his family over the eye slit on the left found watching. Looking out towards the forest paths, early in the morning. Everyone knew why he was there. A few would join him quietly, looking to see if the sun might truly rise that day, only to be broken when it never happened. The people would speak of the blonde most days. Maybe just a word or two. Sometimes they'd spend the entire day remembering him and his amazing feats. Gone were the days they'd see him as the kitsune. He was Naruto now. People would tell their kids, they would talk of him as though he'd been everyone's best friend. The newer, younger children came to know the name Naruto as a name of a great boy. That's how he was spoken of. As a boy, but everyone said he'd be a great man without a doubt. So children would beg their senseis to talk about this boy wonder. Sure enough, it was Iruka who spent the better of his time telling of Naruto. Of his bad growing up, and the way he'd come to change everyone. How he never gave up and went onwards without fail. So the children thought of Naruto as a hero. As well they thought of Sasuke a hero. The children would bow their heads whenever the last of the Uchihas would walk by. They had heard, and could see plainly the fact Sasuke wanted Naruto to come back. That he'd wait till death at that gate for the sun to walk back into their lives. Some of the children brave enough, sometimes would stand beside him, looking up into his eyes, then back out into the forest. Trying to see this boy that their parents spoke of, that the whole village spoke of, to see if they could find the cheerful boy who had left his mark on people who once hated him. Yet never a yellow-haired, blue-eyed boy did they see. Sasuke stared. He'd been doing it for years now. 5 years of looking and waiting. Of wondering. This year was the worst. He was supposed to come back. Yet he hadn't. He'd gone out at the request of the Hokage to find him after a month had passed. But he found nothing. Not even a clue as to where he was. No one knew of a yellow-haired, blue-eyed, happy hyperboy or man. So Sasuke returned to hopeful faces, only to watch them dissolve into sad weary faces when he told them his news. Naruto, come home, please, please. Dobi, come back, I miss you, everyone misses you. You have the whole village awaiting your return. What more do you need? Why won't you come back? I know you aren't dead. Why you can't be dead, he thought painfully as the sun rose high over the trees. The sun, but not his sun. His had set 5 years ago. All that remained was a moon. A moon that brought back that angel face. That laughter, that smile and dancing merry eyes. A moon, shadows of the once powerful sun. Mocking him. Sasuke sighed as time moved on, and still no Naruto. He got up and walked to meet Sakura and Kakashi at the ramen stand. Today was his birthday. It used to be a sad day because it was the day the Kyuubi attacked, but now, it was because it was Naruto's birthday, and he wasn't there to celebrate. Entering the stand, he felt his heavy heart gain weight. A tiny birthday cake sat in front of his stool. There were also more people here today than normal, most having their sad eyes on the little cake. A few stories being told of him. Funny, sad, stupid and angry. The stories were always floating around the village. No one ever got tired of telling them. And the children loved to hear about them. There were a few of them here too. A few wild flowers laid beside the little cake. The people in the ramen stand nodded to Sasuke as he sat down with Sakura and Kakashi. The other rookies were there as well. All of them very quiet. Each remembering how Naruto had changed their lives. The rookies spent the rest of the day there. Leaving to go home once it got darker. Sasuke was the last to leave. He walked back to his huge, empty, cold home. Wistfully wishing that tomorrow his son might appear. 3 weeks later, pale blue eyes gazed at the one place he'd ever called home. The one place he'd run away from his heart for. He just stared at it for a few hours. Not moving closer, he looked at all the small changes. The buildings were better, the walls stronger. He could see Anbu guarding. His eyes had seen so much over the years. He felt older than 21. It seemed more like 60 years since he'd last been home. He wondered if people would hate him. With another wistful smile, he began to walk silently to his home. Night had fallen by the time his slow gait got him to the village gates. He didn't bother to alert the Anbu patrols that he was there. He'd found slipping by people and into places had become second nature. Like making no sound, not speaking often, and listening in on all conversations going on and keep each in order. The latter had been hard to learn, but now was so easy. He could keep up to 20 different conversations straight at a time. He'd picked up several languages as well. He'd become much more wise and worldly from his time away. skills and abilities as well. He'd have just felt weird if he didn't keep up with his training. He'd worked hard while he was gone to keep from falling too far behind the others. Even if he had not gone through the testing to become a Anbu or a rank higher than that which he left with. He knew he'd have trouble getting back into the system, but he'd deal with it when it came. He took out the small headband, tying it around his right leg with a faint smile. He'd wanted to wear his headband for 5 years now. It felt like he was nameless when he hadn't had it on. Now he was home, now he had a name again. After it was tied, he walked to see Ba-san. He owed her a hello and to ask her if his apartment was still available for him to go in, or if he'd have to find a new place. He breezed by all the guards and went into the Hokage's room. She was muttering over her paperwork. He felt a tiny smile open on his face. Shaking his head softly, he sat down in the chair across from her. Waiting for her to notice. He waited for 10 minutes before he let out a quiet laugh and caught her attention. Who? Nah. Ba-san, I'm hurt. Naruto, she screeched, her eyes almost popping out, mouth wide open. That's quite the look, Ba-san. I'd answer all your questions, but I'd like to know if I have to find a new place to stay or not, or if I'm going to be on the street for a few nights. What? No. Your apartment is still yours. I've been keeping up the payment for when you returned, but... Tomorrow, Ba-san, tomorrow. I'm in need of a good rest and a nice bed, so I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay? Alright. Sleep well, Naruto. Hi, ya Ba-san, he said, turned then left to his apartment. The 5th Hokage sat there for a good hour, simply staring at the door Naruto had left out of. She'd been too shocked to notice the changes right away. Now she could see the differences. He hadn't made a sound. Hadn't been grinning like an idiot. Hadn't been yammering on. Hell, he'd gotten in without so much as an Anbu seeing him. This wasn't the Naruto who left, and when she thought about it, his eyes had been so pale, so sad. She remembered what the three-tailed fox told her. Maniac, I think you are talking about the old Naru. The new one is sad, very sad. Even the big boss feels for the lil guy. Quote. I was kind of hoping he wasn't telling the truth, but it seems the past 5 years have been hard on him. I hope everything will turn out alright in the end though. She then went back to her work. Naruto walked up to his old home, pulling the key out from under the mat, and walking in. He didn't even turn on the lights. He just made it to his bed, putting all of his stuff away, then collapsing on the bed. Single quote. I'm home, now I can sleep. Good night, Kyubi. Good night, Kidling. Rest well, you'll have a lot to do tomorrow. Hi. Sasuke woke up early, and started heading for the gates, only to be stopped by Neji. Which was odd. Neji and the others never tried to stop him. They all understood that it was the only thing that let him wake up in the mornings. Yet, Neji stopped him today. Quote. Sasuke, the Hokage requested all Anbu and senseis to meet. She wouldn't let you out of it either, we asked. HN, was Sasuke's only reply. Turning to look at the gates, he then followed Neji to the meeting place. Soon all the Anbu and senseis were gathered. All were wondering what this was all about. The Hokage seemed more lively today, which was odd, but none thought too much about it. You are all wondering what this is about, I gather. Well, it has to do with the testing of a ninja to see if he qualifies for Anbu status. I don't understand. The testing time is next month, why are we taking special testing for this one? Asked Kiba. Well, I believe that he is already Anbu ranking. However, if he were to wait till the testing next month, it would mean he'd have a longer time to try and get established in the village again. Again, Sakura asked. The 5th smiled and nodded. Then her smile widened and said with a great grin. Ah, here we are. All of you please welcome. She started pointing to behind them. They all turned to see. None had felt anything, nor heard anything. So all were surprised anyone could sneak up on them. All were shocked, all stunned and brought speechless. There, behind them, stood the sun. His hair more golden than yellow, his eyes a color of ice, his body tall, lean and oozing out effortless power and ability. He stood there, a quiet man. A man with a gentle smile on his face, a soft glitter in his eyes. Naruto, yelled an eccentric brown-haired sensei who then launched himself at the blonde and pulled him into a fierce hug. The others blinked wondering what to do. Everything was settled when they heard the warmth of the laughter and the liquid voice that cried out. Iruka-sensei, you're choking me. Another laugh when Iruka suddenly released him asking if he was alright and fussing over him. A gentle smile was Naruto's response. Soon Sakura was running over to Naruto to capture him in a hug. The others soon were asking questions, shaking his hand, patting his pack. It was chaos. Sasuke stared, but didn't move. He couldn't. It was so. He didn't know what to do. Naruto was back. He watched every move the blonde made, taking in the details. He'd changed so much. His hair, his eyes, his size. Damn, he was almost as tall as he was. Yet it was also his smile. His smile wasn't that huge idiotic smile, but it held more power than the other. A warmth oozed from that soft smile. His eyes were aglow with happiness. His laugh was full of welcome and ease. Sasuke wanted to go over, but he couldn't. It was too much. What if the rumors of Naruto having found someone was true? What were the chances he'd even been interested in him? Naruto was liked by all now. All right, everyone. Enough. Now you can all see why I wanted to have a private testing for him now. The fifth said, beaming. The others laughed and nodded. And soon details were being agreed upon. A mission, a class, with the testers going along to see he could handle himself. Naruto let a soft laugh out and retorted. I don't think I'll be having much trouble if I can sneak up on you all. Plus, what's the chances I'd fail? Ha. I won't run away from any mission. Everyone settled after hearing that. The question buzzing through everyone's head. But Naruto, why did you leave? Sakura asked softly. I can answer that, Sakura, the fifth said softly. I had a very hard, long, and important mission to be done. It would involve high stamina for spy jutsus, also a way to communicate without having to rely on others. Plus, there was the fact that the village had been wearing Naruto's cheer down. I noticed because he'd asked for long-term missions, and as soon as he was back, it wouldn't even be a single day before he'd ask for another. So I had hoped that he'd get away long enough to get a break, as well as get the vital information I needed. That's why he went, as well as why only he and I knew what was happening, she finished. Everyone was quiet as they took that in. Naruto had left because the village had been wearing him down. They had been breaking the unbreakable, and never even noticed the signs. They were all feeling like crap right about now. Naruto had been so missed by the whole village, and yet, it was the village that drove him away. No need to think about that, it's in the past now anyways. Now, if you don't mind. I've got a date with a ramen bowl. I haven't had one since the last time Kit snitched me one. Yeah, Naruto stated before turning and silently stalking away. Everyone watched as he left without a sound. Even when they tried to hear his footfalls, they had nothing. They still couldn't feel his chakra signature either. It was then that Iruka laughed, then ran after him. Wait up, I'll join you. The others then laughed, the former rookies going to eat with them, the Anbu on guard going to their posts, the teachers staying to discuss when to set up Naruto's testing day. Sasuke just left. He shadowed the others, but made no plans to join them. It was a riot when Naruto sat on his stool and ordered ramen. The ramen stand owner was crying in happiness, saying how glad he was that Naruto was back. It was said so loudly that soon everyone had heard and were all coming to see if it was in fact true. The place was soon crawling with people all talking and seeing Naruto. And over it all, you could hear Naruto's warm laugh. Sasuke watched from the rooftops. He wanted to tell Naruto, but how could he? What did he think? He was one of the people who sent Naruto away. Yet, he wanted to talk to Naruto so bad it hurt. He sighed, and went off to train instead. Perhaps it would help clear his head. Unknown to Sasuke though, Naruto had noticed him following them all. Noticed that they hadn't spoken. Noticed that he left. Right now he couldn't leave to talk with Sasuke, but he had a good idea where to find him once he could. 2 weeks later, Naruto awoke before the sun could ever dream of rising. He cleaned up, ate, and changed into a pair of black jeans and a crimson tank top. He put on his black gloves, then tied his headband around his right leg. Satisfied, he then left the apartment, heading for a place he knew Sasuke would visit. Sooner or later it wouldn't matter. Naruto would be waiting. He'd been unable to get away from everyone's questions and welcome backs, then he'd been on his Anbu testing, succeeding easily. Now however, he had to talk with the one man he'd thought about every day since he left. And if he wanted to be truly honest with himself, he'd thought about Sasuke every day since he first met him. It didn't take long at all before Naruto was at the training field. He went into the trees and set himself up for a long wait. He'd gotten very used to waiting, to listening and to reading the things unspoken and unnoticed. He still wondered what he'd say, but he'd worry about that when it came time. Right now, silence and stillness, that was what he had to be. What he was. Few hours later, Sasuke trudged up the pathways to his training area. He visited every day since Naruto returned. He'd spent nearly 3 days up here when Naruto left for his Anbu testing. He had been plagued by what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. When he returned an Anbu officer, Sasuke was happy for him, yet never congratulated him, never welcomed him back either. Was he hiding? Yeah, he was. He began with simple warm-ups, then moved into practice. He employed his advanced eyes as he fought. He fought to try and rid himself of the guilt, the fear, but he never did. Never could. He looked around the training area, his eyes still intense. He never heard or saw Naruto, and jumped when he spoke behind him only a few paces. Ohio Sasuke, was the simple greeting. Sasuke turned and was going to retort the way he would have when they were kids, but the moment blue and black locked. Words were a thing of the past. Both young men stood staring at the other. Blue meeting black, sun meeting moon, rivals trying to understand, trying to voice what they had racing through their minds, only to fall mute. Sasuke was the first to do more than stare. He cautiously moved a bit towards the other, which resulted in a softening of the frozen two. Soon, without any real thought on either's part, they found themselves within the other's arms. A fierce embrace, with both letting out a shaky sigh. Naruto, was all that Sasuke could breath out when they pulled out of the embrace a bit to lock eyes again. He had wanted to say so much. So many things. He wanted to apologize, to tell Naruto that but it was just as well that Naruto had heard all he needed. He could read enough from just hearing his name out of Sasuke's lips, those lush pale perfect lips. It took no thought at all to have Naruto crushing his mouth over the others. He hoped he wasn't making the greatest mistake in his life, but he couldn't take being so near. So near and not do what he'd wanted to do for so long. Sasuke was surprised when Naruto's mouth crushed over his own, but soon an answering ache drove him into responding. His mind lost in a sea of pleasure, happiness and an overdose of Naruto nearness. His tongue flicking out to swipe over the blondes. A soft moan and entrance was his reward. A battle of tongues, and soft moans lasted a good hour. Neither letting go of the other. It was Naruto who smirked, then forced Sasuke up against one of the surrounding trees as he suckled on the black-eyed man's neck. A perfect moan in Naruto's opinion, followed by a gasp as Naruto's hand strayed over a telltale sign of Sasuke's needs, which Naruto was going to have no complaints as giving. Locking mouths once again, Naruto then began a soft grinding against his blue-black-haired companion. Sasuke was to the point of growling in need as Naruto relentlessly worked his body into a fever. His hands soon sought out his sunshine, his left resting along his waist, his right entangling in the blonde locks. Moaning pitifully when Naruto fought back by slipping a hand up his shirt and gently stroking the skin underneath. His other hand snaking around to play with the hair at the nape of his neck. He pouted and growled when Naruto suddenly withdrew from his mouth. "Nay, Sasuke," Naruto said softly. What is it, Dobi?" Sasuke said with a smirk at the blonde's narrowing eyes. "I'm not a Dobi, bastard, but just, he stumbled over his own words. Then planted a light chaste kiss before replying in warm tones, with caring eyes and loving smile. "I love you, Sasuke, have for a while now, but, just didn't have the guts to tell you, and what with mean having to leave and all so I." Naruto was cut off when Sasuke took possessive control over the blonde's mouth, ravishing it like there was no tomorrow. His eyes blazing when he replied. "I love you right back, Dobi, and don't think I'll let you pull that stunt again either. After a week I'm going out and dragging you back if I have to you." This time Sasuke was cut off as Naruto took over his mouth. "Agreed, if I'm going for longer than a week you have to come with me. Fair enough, but right now, how about we go to bed? It is night after all." Sasuke looked surprised, looking up. Sure enough, it was night, a full moon smiling down on them. "Well, looks like you aren't such a mocking moon after all," Sasuke whispered as he and Naruto made their way back towards the village. Thanks for watch here, guys.